Star Wars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, a UK-based Star Wars podcast with in-depth discussions and analysis, always sprinkled with some silliness. And we are back, as I said, with a brand new episode of Star Wars, talking all about the 2024 biannual Disney Expo D23. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete.
I am Jason Hondoling.
And I'm Kat Risialka.
And as I said, we are back to talk D23. It's just happened last week. Obviously, you know, Disney usually reveal a lot about their theme parks, a lot about their movie studios, their animation studios, their sister companies like Pixar, Marvel Studios, of course, Lucasfilm, which includes Star Wars. And that is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about the Lucasfilm properties. So we're going to be talking about Star Wars in television, Star Wars on the big screen, Star Wars in animation, Star Wars in the Disney parks, and then also a little bit Indiana Jones as a Lucasfilm property in the Disney parks as well. But to kick things off, we'll go to you, Kat. Kat, how are you doing, and how was your excitement levels during D23?
So I think I completely missed most of D23 because I have been working hard on bringing you the latest Lego content for Blocks magazine, which is the publication I write for on the day-to-day. And I was out walking the dogs when most of the announcements dropped. So I had no idea what was going on. I knew stuff was blowing up on Twitter. I had no idea. So my excitement level was after, when I got back and I could actually figure out what was going on without my dogs pestering me. So I am very excited by the trailers and information we received. And I am just so excited for Skeleton Crew. That trailer blew me away.
Yes, and we will indeed be deep diving Skeleton Crew and what we saw from them. Obviously, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I'm a big fan of Jude Law, and I'm very excited for Jude Law to come to Star Wars. Jason, let's go over to you. How was your D23 sort of weekend? Obviously, I know you were quite busy, you know, with your own very special Dorchester Strikes Back DSB inaugural event. But talk us through sort of fitting in the D23 hype with Dorchester Strikes Back.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that I kept flicking through on the Book of Face and several other websites and that, picking up on the sort of stuff that was coming through. And yeah, I was, again, when the Skeleton Crew trailer dropped, I was like, yeah, interesting. So yeah, something I'm looking forward to. Be interesting to see what that's about. And obviously, any news about the Mandalorian and Grogu and what's going on in the film world was welcome. So listening to snippets about what was announced, and also maybe accidentally seeing stuff that appeared on websites, you know, that just happened to come up on feeds, so you take a peek. And yeah, looks like a lot of exciting stuff was announced.
There certainly was, and we will dive into it. We're going to start off with what you've just said there, the Mandalorian and Grogu. So that is, of course, the continuation of the Mandalorian storyline. So instead of season 4 of the Mandalorian, we are getting a movie, Mandalorian and Grogu. Obviously, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were on stage, who are also bringing Mandalorian to the big screen. And I think the whole point of their sort of reveal was to talk about the joy that they have in bringing the Mandalorian and Grogu to cinemas. There was a video show which I've only seen glimpses of. It was not released to the public. Looked like more of sort of flashbacks and glimpses from the previous 3 seasons of Mandalorian. When they were speaking on stage, though, there was sort of a still image of sort of a New Republic refueling base it looked like. Maybe the one for Mandalorian that we've seen, where the X-Wings and Y-Wings parked, and it was Y-Wings parked up, there was an X-Wing there, and there was a Y-Wing having some work done. Then, as also part of the clip, we did see a Razor Quest cockpit with Zeb from Star Wars Rebels in it. But let's go to you, Kat. Just obviously, how excited are you for the Mandalorian Grogu, and like, how do you feel about some of the teasers and glimpses that we got at D23 in regards to the Mandalorian and Grogu movie?
Absolutely. I'm completely excited for this movie because I think all of the action and storyline that has been delivered in the television series fits the big screen so well. It's very easy to picture a Mandalorian and Grogu movie because it's bounty hunters, it's heartwarming story, it's a single dad just making his way in the galaxy with his adopted son. It's the kind of story you want to see on the big screen. You want to be thrilled, you want to be awed, and the reveals that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were talking about, hinting what the story is going to be about, feel very, I think, honest to what that first season was of Din Djarin and Grogu forging that relationship. And yes, there's going to be Din doing bounty hunting work, apparently for the New Republic, but he's also got Grogu by his side, which is what we want to see. And from like clips of the sizzle reel that snuck their way online, and the information that has very been helpfully written down by people who were actually there, has suggested that Din Djarin is taking on bounties or missions for the New Republic, and that's possibly where Zeb Orrelios is going to fit in, because from the most recent season of The Mandalorian, we know that Zeb is helping to train new recruits, and that could be where he got a new Razor Crest from. I don't think it is the Razor Crest that we see. I do think it's actually the same style of ship, but a new one, because we all know what happened to the old one.
We do indeed. It got smashed to smithereens. My thoughts were, is it a flashback to before it got destroyed? Maybe he already has a relationship with Zeb, which I think is probably not likely, but maybe a tiny bit possible. Is it, or have the New Republic sort of found another Razor Crest to give him as a gift, which I think is pretty cool. But as much as I love the Razor Crest, I do very much love the sound and the design of the N1 Naboo Starfighter, especially his lovely chrome version. So I do hope we see that as well. Jason, let's go to you. What's your thoughts on the Mandalorian Grogu coming to the big screen, and what were your thoughts on some of the tidbits that we got from the D23 panel?
Yeah, again, I sort of caught the glimpse of what had happened on the stage, and I saw there was obviously a lot of flashback. It was like they presented the past of the Mandalorian, and then they were showing the few bits that obviously have already been filmed, and it was obviously there's the bit with Zeb in the Razor Crest, which that just I think it's probably Zeb's given Din Djarin a new Razor Crest, probably to carry out missions with, because let's face it, the M1's just not as practical as it could be for big missions. And obviously anything that everyone knows my love of Rebels. So just seeing Zeb in live action the first time was brilliant. The fact that he's going to be in the film just really made it for me. Also, there was some snippets, if you've seen the bits online, that look like Hoth, and quite a lot of action going on Hoth. So it's almost, I wonder if it's Din Djarin's looking into what the Empire or the New Order are up to, where they've previously been active. But yeah, it's the whole idea of Din Djarin working with the rebels, and I think it's become quite apparent that's the way they were going one from the way the last season ended, and also for the stuff that obviously um, got shelved when Rangers got shelved. I'm really looking forward to some of this. I've got a feeling that maybe if they're bringing Zeb into it, that because obviously we know after Dave Filoni's finished with the Mandalorian Grogu, obviously his next project will be the second season of Ahsoka. So I'm wondering if that's going to be where we're looking at, whether there's the link with Ahsoka and Zeb maybe appearing in the second season of Ahsoka as they really do bring back the Ghost crew. But no, it was a little tease. It was good to hear that it was actually in production. That was really good news, I think, for everyone that it was moving forward. Because I think that's what we all wanted to hear, that something was moving forward. And we've been given these dates of when the films are due to drop, but it's actually seeing them putting that work into place. So yeah, I think it was really good sort of introduction to what's to come for us.
What's your thoughts on Zeb being used in The Mandalorian? Because as much as I loved seeing him, I always thought that I feel like Zeb was never portrayed as much of a pilot in Star Wars Rebels, and two, it was very much shown that like at the end of the war, he very much went to like follow the secret hyperspace lanes to his home planet. So I don't know what your thoughts are, Jason, on Zeb being used in this way for The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I have to admit, that was originally a bit jarring for me in the original appearance in The Mandalorian. If it had been Hera there with the pilots, that would have seemed completely reasonable to me. Zeb in a flight suit was a little bit off of what we're used to of Zeb. But then again, obviously, times moved on from when we saw them in Rebels. We knew he was involved with the rebellion, and obviously we'd seen in some of the episodes in Rebels that he was becoming more of a leader of the rebellion. He was taking on more responsibility and actively. So completely reasonable that he could have moved into the flying side of things and just not something that we'd seen previously. But yeah, it was a sort of, why didn't they use Hera for that particular scene? Obviously, once we'd seen Ahsoka, that sort of stood to reason why they didn't use Hera. So it made
Yep.
sense
Kat, what's your thoughts
after
on
that.
Zeb being a New
But
Republic
no,
pilot
it'd
of
be
some sort,
interesting to
maybe a
see
teacher,
what they
and
actually
also
do.
Zeb being obviously not on his home world of the new Lasot?
It is a little surprising because at the end of Rebels, he seems to be going back to his people, having regained his honor to forge a new life for himself, one in peace and prosperity. But maybe Zeb just couldn't sit still. I think sometimes we all make plans of, this is it, I'm done, going to relax now, I have contributed all I can contribute. And then you realize, actually, you're not done. You feel a fire inside you that drives you to pastures new. And I wonder if he's come back, maybe Callus, as a former Imperial, would also want to help the New Republic more, especially as he may be able to act as a go between for the Imperial defectors and those that Imperials now wanting to join the New Republic, as we've seen in The Mandalorian. So seeing Zeb is a little surprising. I think he does fly that. Doesn't he fly that TIE fighter in season 1 of Rebels? The one that Sabine ends up giving that crazy paint job. So I think Zeb can fly. He just chooses not to.
He does indeed
So
fly that, but I think him and Ezra do nearly crash that a couple of times. I think he can fly. My thoughts were like there's a difference between like flying something now and again and then being like a New Republic pilot. But I mean, hey, if he's being with Hera, he's learning from the best, isn't he? So
Exactly, and perhaps he's just the most patient teacher. Hera did offer some questionable advice when flying, so maybe Zeb is a little bit calmer and a little bit more less daredevil stunts in hyperspace and in taking on Imperial remnants.
And that brings me to my last question for you, Jason, about this. So, obviously, Kat's mentioned there perfectly about the Imperial Remnant in Agent Hot Callus could indeed be involved, similar to how you've seen some of the other Imperials shown on Coruscant, for example. Do you think we will see Agent Callus in the Mandalorian Grogu?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the character will transition to live action. I would like to, because I think he's a brilliant character, um, but I'm not sure if they will.
And going to you, Kat, obviously, Jason mentioned, we've seen some clips about Hoth and snowtroopers and things like that, which I believe are from the Mandalorian Grogu. Um, Hopefully not get mixed up there between Andor and Skeleton Crew. So, what's your thoughts, Kat, on could we maybe see, obviously, Hoth is a rebel base, yeah, as we see in Empire Strikes Back. Obviously, it gets bombarded by the Empire pretty badly, and the rebels have to make a daring escape. They aren't going back there anytime soon. Obviously, it's a pretty secret base. So, do you think the Empire could then use Hoth to conduct scientific experiments? And could this be similar to the one we see in The Mandalorian, where maybe Moff Gideon has been doing some cloning here?
Quite possibly from the information that's been revealed or leaked online, it does seem to be confirmation that it is a snow planet with snow troopers and AT-AT walkers. Whether it's Hoth or not, I'm not sure. You can't really tell from that footage, and one ice planet kind of looks like another. But it would make a lot of sense for the Imperial remnants to be hiding out on very remote planets that the New Republic wouldn't necessarily explore. So it could be Hoth or something within the region of Hoth. Maybe there's sister planets. I'm not sure.
Well, Hoth is a system, and I think I can't remember what exactly, but it's like is it the ninth planet of the Hoth system or something? It's set at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. That doesn't mean they're all snowmine, but I assume they are. But it's funny how here we are again talking about Star Wars planets, where Force Awakens we see the desert planet. Everyone's thinking it's Tatooine in the build up. We find out it's Jakku. If you look at same with Takodana in not Takodana, sorry, same with what's the planet called again in Rise of Skywalker, where they're doing the Festival of Life?
Oh,
Oh, God.
That planet,
yes.
Begins with a P, doesn't it?
Pasana? Is it
Pasana, yep, Pasana, that's the one, yep, Pasana. So
it.
Pasana, we see in the trailer, everyone thought, oh, it could be Tatooine again, it's not. I think we've had, in The Last Jedi, we have Act 2, obviously, and then obviously in the build-up to, and then during the first few weeks of of the Acolyte, we're like, it's Act 2, but it's actually not Act 2, and then here we are again, we've seen a snow planet, and again, we've seen that imagery of the snow, we've seen the imagery of the snow troopers, the AT-ATs, the AT-ATs, and we're jumping to that conclusion. So it could very well be Hoth, but we could be getting tricked again. But as a Star Wars fans, we love going down the rabbit hole, as they say.
It could also be Ilum.
Could indeed.
Because we know that the Empire started building Starkiller Base before the First Order took it over. So it could be Ilum. That's just a thought that's popped into my head when we're talking snow planets.
Could indeed, because it would fit into sort of, the mining of the Kyber crystals for the Death Star and all that, which would be pretty cool. Any closing thoughts on The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is coming to cinemas? Jason, we'll go you first.
Yeah, just really excited. Great to see one more Mandalorian and Grogu adventures, and two Star Wars on the big screen. For me, it's going to be quite a thing. I'm quite looking forward to It'll be the first Star Wars I think that I'll probably take Jess to see. So that'll be quite a big thing for me when that happens.
It will indeed. It'll be magical. Kat, excited for Mandalorian Grogu and counting down the days for the big screen debut?
Absolutely. It's going to be very exciting to walk into a cinema to see Star Wars again and have that music blasting right in your face.
It certainly will. Moving on from the big screen, we are going to television. Skeleton Crew, obviously a series we've known about for a while now. It is the Jude Law-led sort of dive into 80s nostalgia, Amblin style storytelling from sort of a children's point of view, a la E.T. and Goonies, Monster Squad, that type of feel. So yeah, Skeleton Crew, we find out that's coming this December, and we got a teaser trailer which has been released to the public. Let's just go to you first, Kat. Your thoughts on Skeleton Crew, and then your thoughts on the full package that we got with that teaser trailer.
Everything has been so quiet for Skeleton Crew that it's sort of been on the back burner, and I don't think anyone has necessarily been thinking that much about it. It's just another project in the pipeline. But everyone is now talking about Skeleton Crew because that teaser trailer delivered. It set the tone, it set the vibes, and it was exciting. I've seen it a few times, and it's exciting every time I've watched it. It's really interesting to see this other side of Star Wars. We're so used to seeing the galactic conflict, the Jedi battles, the good versus evil on this huge scale. And Skeleton Crew is not that. And I think it's so refreshing to see the everyday side of Star Wars. The kids go to school, the neighbors mow their lawns, and it's just this flip side of intergalactic life. It looks like something Steven Spielberg and George Lucas would have made if they were doing Star Wars together. It has those vibes. It feels very reminiscent of the Goonies, of E.T., even of Stranger Things. And I think that's going to fit so perfectly into the Star Wars universe because we know that there's an everyday life to all of the residents of the galaxy. It's not just the Jedi, it's not just the clones, it's not just the Empire, the First Order. There are just everyday people running the galaxy and helping to run the galaxy. So I am very interested to see where this story is going and just being introduced to a completely new cast of characters.
Are you Neil Nation yet?
Absolutely Neil Nation. I was Neil Nation from the moment they revealed the poster.
For those who don't know, so Neil is one of the child characters on the show who is essentially a child version of the same species as Max Rebo, I believe. He looks very cool and cute. And he's called Neil. So we have the Neil Nation. Let's hope he doesn't meet a fast and similar end as the Yord Horde found with their favourite cast member, Yord. Jason, over to you on that bombshell. Just what was your thoughts on the Skeleton Crew teaser trailer and sort of how you're feeling about the show coming?
Yeah, I am a little bit apprehensive, but at the same time, I'm also very excited. Obviously, I'm at the generation that grew up with, the Goonies, the E.T., everything. I can remember sitting and watching those, and I've also, in later years, enjoyed Stranger Things and loved the nostalgia side of that. And when I watched this, my first instinct was, does this need to be a Star Wars project? But I've now watched the trailer a couple of times and I'm like thinking, yeah, this could. I'm quite intrigued by what they're looking at here. As Kat said, it's like the everyday aspect, We've got all these images of the farming on Tatooine and that. We've seen bits of Coruscant, like the upper echelons. But what about Joe Bloggs on the street? The guy that's the taxi driver and that sort of thing. And that's what I got the vibes from this. You know, the kids going to school, bit like we all were as kids, got these vivid imaginations. We've heard the stories of Jedi's and all this, and you know, why wouldn't they want to go on an adventure? So yeah, I'm intrigued by it and looking forward to it. Obviously, there are some real clangers of straight out of, you know, the music itself to me felt like the Goonies, ET. That just that tone set perfectly. And then obviously you see the different characters, you see them in the school, and I think it was when Neil, you know, you'd seen all the humans and everything, and then they start talking to Neil as like a school friend who's suddenly very alien, and it's like, oh yeah, you've brought me into Star Wars. So I really like that part of the trailer and just felt, yeah, this is drawing me in. As it went on, you know, there was lots of action, lots going on, which intrigues me. And then obviously there was the introduction of Jude Law's character and the, you know, the exclamation, "You're a Jedi," and obviously the hood being removed to reveal Jude Law, which I thought was really cool, and again sort of brought back memories of Alec Guinness in A New Hope when he revealed himself. So there's so much there that I'm going into it open-minded and looking, you know, I said exactly the same with the Acolyte and everything. I'm going in open-minded and looking forward to being given something different. And that's what I think people need to remember is that Star Wars is a huge galaxy and there's lots of different stories from different perspectives to be told. And that's what I'm looking forward to with this series because that's what I think we're going to get.
Yeah, I'm quite excited. I think when I first watched it on my phone, sort of the shots in the suburbs sort of didn't really seem Star Warsy when I watched it on my phone. But when I've watched it on like my big telly, like through the YouTube app, like it didn't bother us at all. Like seeing it in like widescreen, fully lit, properly looking great. So if anyone who is having issues, maybe try watching it on the best screen possible. It certainly made a difference for me. I just love the fact that we've got these kids, they're getting a bit of mischief. Looks like maybe the drive speed is a bit too fast around the school property, on some of the roads. They're trying to find a bit of adventure. We see one of them sort of reading a book up with a Jedi Knight fighting a Rancor, possibly Luke Skywalker, who knows, depending on when this is set. So it looks like those tales of the Jedi and tales of the galaxy could be getting told as like tales of fantasy, and then the guys are going to find themselves on an actual adventure when they stumble across that hatch, which he says could be an old Jedi temple. Seems like they'll fall down that and end up in a spaceship which takes off on its own, sort of like the ship in Kenobi. What I'm excited about though is that I noticed when the ship went to activate, sort of the skeleton neck moved. And I don't know whose character the skeleton is. I don't know if Jude Law is dead and then somehow comes back reanimated. Maybe not. And I also love that droid that's really badly damaged but then powers itself on. It's like a mismatched droid that someone's built. I'll go to you, Kat. Do you think this ship is Jude Law's ship? And do you think that skeleton is alive or not?
Ooh, I did not get any Jedi vibes from the ship nor the droids on board. It seemed all very makeshift and slapped together. So I think that ship has been there for quite some time, and I think that skeleton is very much a skeleton. And it was just the power of the engine sort of making it rattle in this really spooky way. But the droid definitely gave me a bit of a jump scare because it is a very creepy and sort of ominous design, but I think he's actually going to end up being this really adorable droid that the kids are going to love because he's probably going to be their mentor and guide. Though it seems like nobody can fly this ship because the kids don't look like they know where they're going, nor do they know like what they're doing in the cockpit.
Certainly not.
So
I love the clip
yeah,
where the
it
kid's
does.
like in the turret. That was quite scary, I thought.
It does look like they've sort of bitten off a bit more than they can chew, but I think going on an adventure, trying to escape everyday school life and exams is something that we can all relate to at some point in our lives. And why wouldn't you not assume that it was a Jedi ship? If that's what the stories you've been reading, that's what you'd hope it was. I love the kids' enthusiasm for believing that it could be something out of their storybooks.
No, definitely. And even if they do take up more than they can chew, from the clips we do see some X-Wings sort of overhead with lights on, so they're either Rebellion X-Wings or maybe it's the New Republic era, but looks like some X-Wing heroes could be there to save the day when they really do need it, which would be cool. Jason, thoughts on who the ship belongs to and thoughts on if that skeleton's going to come alive or not?
Yeah, it's very intriguing. And I don't think it's the space version of the pirate ship from Goonies, but what was the? That's it. I don't think the skeleton is One-Eyed Willie. But the one thing that intrigues me is the different characters that we're going to be introduced to. Obviously, the robot or droid that we see, I believe, is the character that's being voiced by Nick Frost, who's obviously famous for his work with Simon Pegg. And he's quite a cool actor that I'm quite looking forward to seeing what he's got to say.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, like I said, the Skeleton Crew's come in December. We know that now. We've got the teaser trailer. That seems to all be wrapped up, which is fantastic, shooting wise. So we're fully in the post production age of the series. And I think between now and December, obviously, we're going to get probably more of a story driven trailer. Merchandise will start getting released. We'll see images for that, and cast and crew interviews. And if they do the same type of job as they did for the Acolyte with sort of cast and crew interviews and marketing, then I think we're in for a very exciting time in the build up to this show. Kat, any closing thoughts on Skeleton Crew?
Just a question. Do we think Jude Law is actually a Jedi, or is he some kind of rogue Force user?
So, as a Jude Law fan, shall we say, I think Jude Law possibly might not be a Jedi, pretending to be a Jedi, but he could be. He's going to be a good dude in the end. He's going to be a bit challenged, like he is in most of his roles. He's going to be a bit challenged and have some things going against him, but deep down, he's a good dude and he's going to do the right thing in the end, I think. So, possibly not a Jedi, but I think by the end of it, we'll be showing Jedi qualities, is my thought. And just thought, obviously, Skeleton Crew comes out December, so you can double team it. You can watch The Holiday with Jude Law, fantastic movie, and then you can also watch Skeleton Crew with Jude Law. Combine them both for a double bill every episode, and it'll be a great time. Jason, what's your thoughts? Is Jude Law going to be a Jedi, or is he something different?
I'm honestly not sure. I don't know if for me Jude Law could be a Jedi, but he is he's played some characters that I really have enjoyed, and obviously I love his portrayal of Watson in the Sherlock Holmes films. So yeah, I'm hoping he is a Jedi. I'm hoping that this is going to be a nice surprise for the kids, and they're going to be took on a Jedi adventure. But could he be something else? Somehow I don't think he's going to be a con man like we saw in Andor, not Andor, in Obi-Wan Kenobi, where he was using magnets and everything. I definitely think he was using the Force to carry that key across the room.
Moving on from that, staying with television, we have Andor Season 2, which we now know is coming in 2025. It'll probably be early 2025, I imagine, to Disney+. Plus. Diego Luna, who is, of course, Cassian Andor himself and the producer on the show, was there on stage to sort of talk about it, maybe showed some things I have not seen, any images that did show any. We did find out that it's going to be set over 4 years. I think it's going to be 4 different arcs with a year in between, perhaps. Taking us from the end of season 1 to Rogue One. And we found out that not only is director Krennic going to be in the series, but we're also getting K2SO is going to be in it. Alan Tudyk's back to voice and I imagine motion capture the droid as well. Kat, we'll go to you. What's your thoughts on Andor Season 2, on the time frame of the show, and on the return of 2 characters that really made Rogue One tick, which is, of course, director Krennic and K2SO?
K2SO supremacy. K2 is my favorite Star Wars droid. I'm sorry, Chopper, but it's K2. And I am just so excited for Alan Tudyk to be reprising the role and bringing this sassy droid back into Star Wars, because K2 was the heart and soul of Rogue One. He was the comic relief. He was the unexpected delight that delivered all the wrong lines in all the wrong moments, and it was just comedy gold. And Andor is a serious show. It deals with a lot of the politics of Star Wars, and I think sprinkling in a little bit of K2's personality and terribly timed jokes will be so good for the series. And to then have Krennic also be returning, it was rumored that Ben Mendelsohn would also be reprising his role, and I'm very glad he is, because he was a standout in Rogue One. Everyone in Rogue One was just incredible, but Ben Mendelsohn's character, you couldn't help but root for him at times, because he did have a point. He did really make the Death Star. And hopefully we'll be getting more information on maybe some of the inner machinations of the Imperial programs. I'm wondering if it might even tie into the book Catalyst, which does highlight some of Krennic's plans on how the Death Star was made and how it was funded. Very good book. Highly recommend that if you need something to read in between now and Andor Season 2's release date of next year.
Definitely, my advice would be, because that book's like the perfect tie-in book. It's not even a tie-in book; it just feels like part of it. So, for me, anyone who's excited for Andor Season 2, I would go away. I'd watch Rogue One, and then I would read Catalyst, and then I would watch Andor Season 1, and then that probably sets you up perfectly for what's to come in Season 2 of Andor. Kat, what's your thoughts on sort of the 4-year story arc we're going to see? You think that's really interesting, I think, for a TV series to do in one season?
That is quite a big jump for a television series, especially as we seem to be in this very restrictive storytelling era of just 8-episode seasons. And that goes for everything. It's not a Star Wars problem, it's a problem around the board currently for making television series in most studios. And having possibly 4 episodes dedicated to 2 years and then the other 4 episodes dedicated to the next 2 years, that's a lot of story to really squeeze into only 8 episodes. And I really do hope they give their characters the time they need to breathe, and clearly you can see the clear progression of their motivations for their character arcs, because sometimes that can get a bit muddied if you're trying to tell the story at too quick of a pace. I think the character development can sometimes suffer. So I am really hoping that the episode will at least be longer to compensate for the shorter season, and to give this 4 years of storytelling the space it needs to make sense.
I don't know if they'll get longer, but I think it'll be, when it gets announced, they'll say it's 12 to 16 episodes, I think, for Andor. I just have a feeling. We'll find out.
I would always want a longer Star Wars series, because they hit different. The 22 episodes of Clone Wars was the perfect length. 16 episodes for Bad Batch worked really well, and I would be really happy if they did announce Andor to be longer than the current Disney Plus series we've been getting.
I think it'll be 12 to 16. I think it'll be 12 episodes to 16 in that ballpark region. Do you think, obviously they're not going to announce everybody, they've announced some people who are back, but obviously with Krennic being back and in this time frame of working on the Death Star, we'll go to you, Jason. Do you think we will see Jyn Erso's dad, Galen Erso, and do you reckon we'll see Mads Mikkelsen reprise that role?
There's a good chance, and it would fit with the story. So yeah, that is a possibility. With Krennic being involved, and obviously leading into, Cassian's mission in Rogue One, it would make sense for him to reappear. And it wouldn't surprise me. He's the sort of character that if they were to keep that quiet, they know it would cause a lot of buzz around the launch time. So yeah, definitely. I was a little bit surprised at the announcement that Saul Guerrera's going to be in it, because obviously he'd not had much involvement. Well, Cassian didn't meet him till in Rogue One, but then again, there's a lot going on with Mon Mothma in the background. So then, the more I thought about it, I thought, yeah, Saul Guerrera coming into it could make sense, because obviously he's quite an important part at this time in the story. So there's lots of different people that could slot in. Could we even at the end get Hayden Christensen as Vader? It's a possibility.
It is indeed. I think pretty sure Forrest Whitaker was in Andor season 1, wasn't he? Cut as Saw Gerrera.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, very briefly.
yep.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely excited for him to be returning, because it's this idea that the rebellion and the formation of the rebellion has all these conflicting ideas and ideologies. Mon Mothma is very much a pacifist, and Saw Gerrera is the antithesis to a lot of her ideologies. So seeing those two clash is always very interesting.
No, it is indeed. Jason, what's your thoughts on it coming in 2025? So we're maybe waiting a little bit longer than we thought we would.
Yeah, I'm guessing they're probably tidying bits and pieces up. Also, there is the desire at the moment not to oversaturate the market with stuff. We're seeing a gradual gap between series where we did have a little bit of time where it seemed to be one would finish and the next would start. So yeah, it gives us time to take a breath, look on. I've actually started just last night rewatching Andor. Over the weekend, I completely rewatched Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's the thing with these series, as new series come out, it gives you the opportunity to go back and rewatch so that you get yourself ready for what's coming in what they're about to give you, because there's so much in the stories that you can pick out from other stories.
Definitely. Kat, what's your thoughts about us getting the show, maybe a few months, not too much later than we thought we were, but a few months later, and wait until 2025 for it?
I think waiting makes sense, because I still want to be talking about the Bad Batch. I still want to be talking about the Acolyte. And I feel sometimes, because the market does become oversaturated with content, with monthly or bi-monthly releases, you almost forget about what's come previously, and it doesn't give fans the time to talk and digest the media that's only just been released. Not everyone has the ability to watch things weekly. Some people wait to binge watch after weeks of releases. So to spread it out makes a lot of sense, not only for the consumer, but also to make sure that the post production crew and the special effects artists all have the time they need to really make sure everything is polished and to the level that they want. Because it happened with Stranger Things season 4, they actually had to split up the season because the special effects were not finished. They didn't give the special effects artists the time they needed. And that's a travesty. These artists need their time, they need the breathing space. So I am completely fine with waiting, and it just gives me time to talk about the Star Wars that's only just been on screen.
No, definitely. Any closing thoughts on Andor, Jason, before we move on?
Just really looking forward to seeing what happens with the series. I really enjoyed the first season, so I'm looking forward to seeing how it concludes, and how it leads into what we already know as the awesome film that's Rogue One.
Indeed. And I'll let Kat take the next one away as our Lego expert. from Blocks Magazine. Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. Tell us all about it, Kat, and tell us everything we know about it.
Well, we know quite a bit. We know it's coming in September, and LEGO Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy is going to be following the misadventures of Sig Griebling, who accidentally rewrites the history of the galaxy after he messes with the sacred cornerstone. And that leads him to Jedi Master Bob in order to put things back as they once were. And this looks like a lot of fun. So the LEGO specials are completely unafraid to do quite ridiculous things in the galaxy. But this is probably their biggest undertaking yet, because this is going to be the length of a feature film, and it is so ambitious. The cast is amazing. We've got Sig Griebling, our hero, even though he's caused a lot of chaos, is voiced by Gaten Matarazzo, who, if you are a Stranger Things fan, you will know. And we've also got Mark Hamill returning as Luke Skywalker. We have Kelly Marie Tran reprising her role as Rose Tico. Anthony Daniels is, of course, back as C-3PO, but he's evil this time. And there are so many more beloved Star Wars voice actors who are going to be in this special, because there is every Star Wars character under the Tatooine suns being rewritten, for everything from Darth Jar Jar, evil C-3PO, to surfer Luke Skywalker, and a light side Darth Vader.
I know it's looking. I really enjoyed the trailer. One of my favorite parts of the trailer was that we see sort of Phase 1 clones from Attack of the Clones, but then there just looks like instead of cloning Jango Fett, they cloned Admiral Akbar, and they're all sort of seeing Intertrap at the same time, which I thought was absolutely wonderful. Kat, is this going to be in 4 parts? Is that right?
I am not sure. I think it's going to be one whole. So I think it's going to be 4 parts, but I think it's all going to release at the same time on September 13th.
Awesome. Jason, I know you're a fan of building Lego. What was your thoughts on the trailer for Rebuild the Galaxy, and what are you most excited for?
I love anything Lego Star Wars, with the stuff that they've done in the past, from the short films to so many different things. And I watched this trailer and I just giggled at so many, as you say, the scene with the clone troopers, who then are revealed to be clones of Admiral Akbar. I just creased up, and I am so looking forward to this. Obviously, there's been jokes for years about Darth Jar Jar, and I think this is the only medium that they could actually bring it to fruition without destroying everyone. And the fact that Ahmed Best is back voicing Jar Jar, everything he touches, I just love. I've got a lot of respect for that actor. And I think what he's brought to the Star Wars galaxy is great. So I'm looking forward to seeing him almost camping it up as an evil Jar Jar. Obviously, seeing I recently went into the nearest Lego store I've got, and they had the new kits all in the cases that you could look at. And seeing the Millennium Falcon all in black and all the different minifigures, I was just, yeah, this is going to be fun. It's Star Wars not taking itself seriously, and that sometimes I think is what people need to take a look at. You know, there's so many jokes that can be had, but they're all in good fun. And yeah, just different characters. Luke is the surfer dude. I think Mark Hamill's going to have a lot of fun with that, knowing the sort of humour that Mark Hamill as a person has got. Give him the opportunity to take the mickey out of himself, and I think he's going to run with it. So yeah, all in all, as you can probably tell, I'm really looking forward to just sitting down and binge watching this series when it drops.
No, definitely. I think it's certainly going to be a fun show, and I'm very excited to check it out. After that, obviously, part of D23 is the Legends ceremony, so it's like the Disney Hall of Fame almost, where they induct an amount of people into the Disney Hall of Fame, into the D23 Legends. And there was 3 people with Star Wars connections this year going in. We had Harrison Ford, of course, Han Solo. We had Frank Oz, who um, obviously not just going in because he was the voice and puppeteer of Yoda, but also was a big collaborator with Jim Henson throughout sort of Jim Henson's career with the Jim Henson Company and the Muppets, and then of course the greatest composer of all time, Mr. John Williams. Yeah, I think all 3 have done so much for cinema and entertainment and storytelling, which is what Disney Company is most famous for. So I think all 3 very much first ballot Hall of Famers, deserve their place as D23 legends. Kat, will go to you. Just your thoughts on Harrison Ford, Frank Oz, and John Williams finally becoming Disney legends.
It's taken them long enough. How many scores has John Williams made for Disney films? Are we forgetting the beautiful score he did for Hook? That Disney film, live action retelling of Peter Pan, Hook's soundtrack will make you cry if you listen to it. Not, I know that John Williams is famous for Star Wars and other much bigger Disney productions, but honestly, every time he has done work for a Disney film, he has just smashed it out of the ballpark. And I love the fact that he is finally getting recognition, as well as Frank Oz, because the Muppets, Miss Piggy, Yoda, so integral to storytelling, puppeteering, and really redefining the mediums in which we tell stories. So, no, very much deserve it to all 3. And like I said, I just can't believe it's taken so long.
Jason, thoughts on the 3 new Disney legends connected to Star Wars?
Yeah, John Williams thoroughly deserved. The guy is a genius, and what he's brought, he is a major part of what makes Star Wars Star Wars. So to see him there was brilliant. Obviously, Harrison Ford. Um, Obviously, not only he's done Star Wars, he's famous for so many other things. He's also now moving into the Marvel universe. So it's sort of a no-brainer that Disney were going to big him up, and deservedly so. He is an amazing guy. And then, as Kat said, Frank Oz, genius puppeteer. The work he did with Jim Henson. There's the documentary on Disney Plus, I think, about Henson and the formation, and obviously that details the work that Frank Oz did with Jim Henson and how important he was to that world. But you've also got to remember that Frank Oz is a great director. You've got Dark Crystal, he was involved with. Um, he did Little Shop of Horrors. What about Bob? In and Out, and so many different things that he's done as a director as well. And if you've watched any of the documentaries about the way he works, he's very much an actor's director, and he works with the actors, and he brings the best out of people. So Frank Oz, I think is a brilliant, brilliant induction. And I was really pleased to see him given that accolade. Likewise, well, as we've said, John Williams, that's just took too long.
Definitely. I've just obviously was in New York earlier in the year, and I went to the Museum of Moving Image, which I definitely recommend anybody who's in New York definitely go see that. It's sort of a museum about the history of the first moving image to sort of cinema and video games and media as we know it now. But they do have an awesome Jim Henson exhibition in there at the moment with so many like actual Muppets on display. Everything from Dark Crystal, Sesame Street, everything, Ninja Turtles, so many things that Jim Henson worked on. But one thing that's really clear when you walk through, and there's pictures of of Jim Henson on set. There's pictures of Jim Henson pieces of script, but there's a lot of pictures there, and Frank Oz is in a lot of all of it. He's there, he's mentioned by name, and you can see that he's very integral to that story. So definitely check out the Museum of Movement Image if you are in New York. Moving on to Disney parks, which is probably my second favorite thing about Disney. First thing would be the own Star Wars. Second would be the Disney parks. Lots of announcements across all of its theme parks across the world. Not a lot of Star Wars announcements, but a couple. So basically, one is a negative, I suppose. Obviously, Disneyland Paris, when they first announced the expansions to the Walt Disney Studios park, it was an Avengers campus, it was a Frozen land, and then it was a Star Wars land, sort of a smaller version of Galaxy's Edge, which is in the original concept art for that expansion by the lake. And then there was also bigger pieces of each land individually. The Star Wars one sort of vanished a bit off the walls, sort of a couple of years ago. Obviously, Avengers Campus has opened. World of Frozen is due to open in 2025. And then they have announced that third land now. In the new big drone is the Pride Lands. So it's linked to the animated Lion King movie, which is 30 years old this year. Which looks awesome, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy it. But as a Star Wars fan, I was really hoping to get sort of a slice of Galaxy's Edge in Paris, but it looks like we're going to have to wait a bit longer for that. Obviously, I know you guys aren't as much of a Disney parks addict as I am, but what's your thoughts, Kat, on the fact that something that was planned, because we've seen the concept art, a mini Galaxy's Edge was going to be there, and it's now not, and it is Lion King?
It is going to be frustrating for a lot of fans because in Europe and the UK, it's difficult to get out to America to enjoy Galaxy's Edge. And if you're a Star Wars fan, trying to have that experience is much more complicated than if you are within the USA. But The Lion King is also my favorite Disney movie of all time. So the Pride Lands announcement actually has me really excited because I just love The Lion King. I love Simba, I love Zazu, I love Scar, I love Nala, and I would totally go to the Pride Lands.
Definitely. I think for me, I think as a Star Wars fan, I wanted it to be Star Wars. For whatever reason, it's not. And we knew it wasn't going to be Star Wars for a while now. We just didn't know what it was going to be. Rumors were Lion King, and then obviously it's officially announced here at D23 it is Lion King, it is the Pride Lands. One thing I have heard is that, so in the main Disneyland Paris park, obviously in Discoveryland, which is Paris's version of Tomorrowland, where Star Tours is, there's sort of room out the back of their Space Mountain, which is currently Hyperspace Mountain as well. So there's rumor has it that they could maybe look to use that land to have the Star Wars land actually in Discoveryland, in Tomorrowland. Jason, obviously, again, you're not as much of a Disney parks fiend as I am. I love hooking that stuff straight in my veins. But what's your thoughts on the fact, it was announced and we had the artwork a few years ago to have sort of a slice of Galaxy's Edge there, and then now it's not?
Yeah, for me, I always dream of traveling to America, going to one of the Disney parks, and especially since Galaxy's Edge, opened, I would love to visit. But at the moment, it's not on the menu. But at the same time, when I heard that there was a possibility that it was going to be closer and that it was going to be a smaller version in Paris, I was quite excited. Obviously, as that's dwindled over time, it's been like, if only they would do it. But there's a lot of stuff that they have to fit into these parks, and I can understand why maybe it hasn't happened. But who knows? One day, they're always expanding these parks, and maybe if the films start taking off again and Star Wars is back in the echelon of all the Disney stuff, then maybe we'll see the parks, and the particular in Paris. One thing I did see announced, I think, as well, was that they're doing there's going to be an upgrade to the Smugglers Run ride at the
We're
parks.
going to get there next. That's our next point, buddy.
All right. I won't spoil that then. But yeah, no, I would love to see it come closer to the UK. Still think they ought to build something in the UK, but hey ho. Um, but no, it is disappointing. But like you guys have also said, for everyone, I think Pride Lands is a great idea. The Lion King, who doesn't love that film? Whether it's the live action or the animated, the history. And let's face it, we've got the links to it as well with the great James Earl Jones voicing Mufasa. So, it's all good, but it is disappointing news from a Star Wars point of view.
It's not surprising when you think about, I think the Star Cruiser, the sort of the hotel cruise experience that, is now shut due to tax reasons, basically. And, I think while it was leading in its form of entertainment, never been seen before, I think, it wasn't very cost effective. And I think that's made them rethink maybe some of their Star Wars things in the parks. So I can understand that. I do think that they will be planning something for Discoveryland. Obviously, you'll have to wait a bit longer for that. But maybe that'll work better. Taking the time to then put it there where Star Tours already is and where Hyperspace Mountain is. That might make sense. We've already got the big X-wing there, and that's where you meet the Mandalorian Grogu or whoever's on offer. So yeah, disappointing, but glad to finally know, because it's been, for over a year now when I've been speaking to people like, oh, well, it's cancelled, and I'm like, oh, no, don't say that because it might not be. But like, my heart always said, oh, it might not be, but my mind's always said, like, yes, it is. It's definitely, it will be cancelled, and it will be announced soon. And my heart was like, well, if they haven't announced it yet, there's still a chance. So at least like now I know that there's not a chance it's going to be there. But like I said, hopefully it means that we do get that in the main park, because I think, as us in Europe, it's hard for us to get to America, and it's expensive as well. Where if it's in Europe, it's still expensive. Don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit cheaper, but it's also easier to get to logistically, and you can plan it better. Another thing as to why I think they might put that in the main park in Discoveryland, which is their version of Tomorrowland, is because obviously we won't get Disney Park in the UK because the park in the continent is in Paris, for example. That wouldn't make sense. But obviously Universal has bought land in England, and they've been very vocal about that, and they're planning that now and looking to get government approval. So that's going to be a lot of UK theme park lovers are going to probably venture there instead of Paris because it's easier. So therefore, Paris is going to have to up its game even more to make sure people go. And that's why I'm hopeful in my heart and a little bit of my brain that we're going to get some sort of Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland Paris one day. And I hope it's actually not Batuu. I hope they go and do a different planet there. And it doesn't have to be as big, but a different planet with a different type of ride would be fantastic. And what I said, with Smugglers Run, the ride simulator, you can run anything, you could design any type of ride to go through that, the same as Star Tours changes all the time, which would be quite cool. And then I would love sort of a different version of Rise of Resistance there as well. As Jason said before, he also announced that the ride, Smugglers Run, which is the Millennium Falcon simulation ride, that is in both the East Coast and West Coast, so it's in Disneyland Anaheim, and it is in Hollywood Studios Galaxy's Edge in Florida. It is going to have a retheme. So currently you do missions for Hondo, and Chewbacca's there as well, and Rey. And now they've said that the Mandalorian and Grogu, there's going to be a retheme. They're going to appear in the ride. So it's going to be a different mission, which I think is really, really cool. What's your thoughts, Kat, on the fact that they can modify and change things up on Smugglers Run?
I think they absolutely need to, because some people do the ride quite regularly or certainly more than once, and it gives you an incentive to come back if there's new things to do and see. And I think the same goes also, even if you are perhaps only experiencing it once as part of a holiday, it's still exciting to know that, well, the content you had was different to what was before, what has come after. And it's got to keep fresh, because Star Wars storytelling isn't ever static. Everything is always moving. So the theme parks do, to an extent, need to keep up with that. And keeping Smugglers Run really in line with that, I think it's a great idea.
And I love the fact that it means we can tell even more stories going forward. And it also means we can alternate them. So, like, we can go back to, like, the original one, or we can tell 6 different stories. And, like, depending on the time of year or depending on what's happening, we can come back and do things. So, yeah, I think it's really, really cool.
Is that you wanting a Smuggler's Run Christmas special?
Why not? Christmas special where Jude Law is his character from The Holiday, flies the Millennium Falcon. No, I'm just joking. But certainly, you know, I think you could certainly do that. You know, like the Pogs could like all be wrapped up as Christmas presents and that. All the different kinds of things you can do. Halloween themed one, like yeah, Easter themed one. You could totally go wild with it, couldn't you? Like you tie it into new movies coming out, new TV shows, anniversaries. You could tie it into anniversaries. You know, it's you could tie it up so many different things. Other Lucasfilm themed theme park business was Indiana Jones. So, as we know, in Animal Kingdom, which is in Disney World in Florida, the Dino Land USA is getting rethemed to sort of an American tropics type area. As part of that, we're getting Indiana Jones Temple Ride. It's going to be a completely new story in the Dino Ride area. It's going to use the Dino ride system. So it's sort of like a retheme, but more than a retheme. Obviously, the Dino ride system is the same as the Indiana Jones ride in California, which is absolutely fantastic. If for those who don't know, it's the ride system that when they first designed it, they were worried about the cost. And at the time, Michael Eisner, CEO, who's my favorite Disney CEO, said it's not about whether we can afford to make the ride, it's about whether we can afford not to. And this is the ride system I was talking about. So I'm very excited to get an Indiana Jones ride here in Florida, in Animal Kingdom, and it's going to be, you know, the same ride system as the one in California, which is fantastic. Different story though, which is great. It means it's different. And you know, the surrounding area is going to be Indiana Jones themed as well as some other American tropics themed. Great to see Indiana Jones living on. You know, we've seen the last film they've announced that was Harrison Ford's last, but you know, there's a new game coming out. Yeah, we have a new ride. The story lives on, and you know, the fact that the Walt Disney Company does own Lucasfilm means it can tell these stories in so many different ways, and it's absolutely fantastic. I don't know what your thoughts are, Jason, on new Indiana Jones stories coming via Disney parks.
Yeah, that's the whole thing with the way that the medium works. Is there's ways of bringing new stories to the fans in new different ways, not just through film or television. And obviously an interactive thing such as a ride, especially with the Indiana Jones. You know, what kid hasn't dreamed of being Indiana Jones? You know, we all pretended to be Indy at some point. So to be able to ride a ride that takes you into Indy's world is just brilliant. And I'm sure it'll be hugely popular, which will be even better.
And then something else that was happening there at the Lucasfilm booth at D23 was the volume. So the volume was set up, which as we know, stagecrafted, sort of the how they can save budget on going on location. The volume was there. Kat, I don't know if you saw that, was sort of set up where we could go and visit the volume. I think it was showing the Kenobi set piece and things like that. You could get involved with it, I think, at certain points throughout the day. And there was also an awesome interview with Manny Jacinto, who's of course the stranger from the Acolyte. He was on there as he was doing his sort of interview. Don't know what your thoughts were on the volume being there for sort of fans to interact with, and then also using it as a backdrop for an awesome interview for Manny.
I think it's great to be able to show this kind of technology to the fans, because while I think almost everyone who watches movies has some knowledge of how they're made, the technology side is probably very amorphous. When people talk about the volume, it kind of sounds like this secret governmental project and not necessarily something used in filmmaking. But to actually be able to see it and interact with it really helps bridge that gap between the filmmakers and the people who consume the films, the media. It helps to explain, look at how this works, look at how actors and set designers work with it, to then translate to the people how those backdrops then are used in The Mandalorian, they're used in the Batman or other projects, because I love knowing about the behind the scenes, and I personally really think that the volume is such a good piece of technology because it has allowed for very beautiful scenes. The Batman has some of my favorite cinematography of any DC movie, and that used the volume a lot, but you couldn't tell. And the way they use the volume, particularly in Star Wars, for the space scenes. So when characters are in fighters or they're in starships or they're in hyperspace, and because there's a screen around them, they can react and interact with the world around them far more organically. So it's a incredible tool for filmmakers, and it's an incredible tool for actors. So for the fans to just get a little glimpse of that incredible tool, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And then yes, I was hoping for an Acolyte season 2 announcement from Manny, but we didn't get that, unfortunately. Could still happen. Fingers crossed.
I think it will happen. But again, I think there'll be time and place for that. Jason, any closing thoughts on D23? Anything we've discussed?
Yeah, I just listening to what Kat said there about the volume. I think it's great that people could actually go and see it. And the thing that I always think about, having seen what they did with the first season of Mando and the interview that they had with Bryce Dallas Howard, and that whole system stems back to the dream that George originally had. And she tells the story of how George spoke when she was a kid to her father, Ron, about how he dreamed of a studio where they could do all the special effects and it was there for them to see. And to see his dream alive, I think just goes to show, what Star Wars has given. I've been looking back recently at some of the stuff, and it's like doing my photography. I look at Photoshop every day, and that was created off of the back of John Knoll's work with Star Wars. And I just think there's so much that it's brought, and for the fans to be able to interact with that, I think it's great. And events like D23 for the fans to interact with, the actors, directors, showmakers, also a lot of the creatives that you don't necessarily see were there at D23. So that's quite an event that people got to attend. Um, I'd love to go to something like that one day. One day I might get there.
Yeah, and I think obviously, it is an expo, which is, sort of a concept that's quite old now, I suppose. The World's Fair and things like that. A lot of Disney's rides come from the World's Fair Expo back in the day. That was one of the things Walt Disney got other companies to sort of finance those rides and those experiences at the World's Fair Expo, and then afterwards moved them into his parks, sort of thing. So it was great to see this. It was a true expo experience, I suppose, in the true sense of the word, which was fantastic. Kat, closing thoughts on D23?
I think D23 had a lot of exciting announcements for what's coming very soon for Star Wars fans. And the trailers have just filled me with so much excitement for the next few months in the build up to both Skeleton Crew and Andor Season 2. And as always, it's just a great time to be a Star Wars fan.
It is indeed. It's also how we got sort of a lot of short-term announcements here, which is fantastic, and we got to see a lot of things like finished or almost finished, or and then obviously Star Wars Celebration will be here before you know it next year in Japan, where we'll get more longer-term announcements. So we're getting fed on sort of both the short-term and long-term announcements each year, which is absolutely wonderful. But that brings an end to our wonderful episode talking about Star Wars and Lucasfilm at D23, from not just television and film, but to also Disney theme parks. Jason, where can people find you on social media?
At Hondo Ling, as always.
And Kat, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Kat Kylo on Twitter. I'm always happy to talk anything Star Wars, Kylo Ren, or Lego.
And where can people find Blocks Magazine?
You can find Blocks Magazine on all social media platforms underneath @BlocksMag, and you can also find us at blocksmag.com.
Definitely check that out. Obviously, I am the Geordie Jedi Pete. You can find me on Twitter, now known as X, and on Instagram as Geordie Jedi Pete. You can also find the podcast on Twitter, now known as X, at Boars Star, and you can also find the podcast on Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook at Star Wars Podcast. And we are also now on YouTube, and you can listen to all of our episodes from episode 1 all the way up to this one on YouTube as well. And we are posting some videos on as well of other things that we're doing. But yes, you can listen to the podcast on YouTube now, and you can just search Star Wars. The handle on there is at Star Wars 1138. On YouTube, so definitely check that out. We also will have a Patreon news coming soon in coming episodes, where there'll be a Patreon coming up for subscription. So anyone listening who wants to help out with the show, to take part in the show by suggesting questions, thoughts, talking points, also bonus episodes for Patreon members only. So news on that will be coming in the coming weeks. And when this episode airs, I imagine we'll be very close to, if not on, our 5th year anniversary of the pod. So again, I just want to dedicate this episode to my big cousin Alan. Al obviously started the podcast with me 5 years ago almost. We would not be here today without him. And then obviously a big thank you to Ian, who comes on the podcast a lot as a co-host. Obviously, Kat and Jason, obviously big co-hosts. Everyone else who's been on. Again, just a big thank you. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, please leave us a top review. Lovely 5 stars, a lovely sentence about why you love the show. It makes us smile for a long time. It only takes you a few moments, and it helps people find the show. And if you are listening on any of the other wonderful podcast applications and it has a feature leader review, again, just a top review, as many stars as you can. Lovely little sentence. Again, keeps us smiling all day. Only takes you a few moments, and it helps people find the show. But without further ado, may the force be with you all, and remember, always tell that to Kanja Club.